Running in literature is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. I am going to show you my trainers. These are trainers that I've been running in for the last 2 or even 3 years. They're Hoka's and they are brilliant, but they actually finally became a bit too holy to wear in any serious way. And I crumbled in January and bought myself some new trainers. But I couldn't let these go because they're just too good. And I do feel that if there's anyone out there from Hoka watching, I should definitely win the prize, surely, for the most worn trainers ever. Um, I did end up buying some new ones, which are equally muddy because I've actually been on a run today. And I do love them, and they're really comfy and much warmer than the ones with holes in them. So I'm going to be talking about running in literature tonight, and I've got a lot of really great books to share with you, both fiction and non-fiction. And I'd love to know if you have any particular favourite running books. I do wish that I had the theme tune of Chariots of Fire on in the background. Um, Imagine it if you can. I haven't quite got the tech organised to do that. So, running in literature, there's a few books that immediately come to mind for many a literary runner. Um, one of which is The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner by Alan Sillitoe, which is a really great short novella published, I believe, in 1975. And that's one that seems to resonate with most people when you say, which books do you think of when you think about running in literature? That one comes up. Um, but we're going to be talking about many others as well, not just adult books, but also kids' books and some non-fiction too. But I do want to start by reading you a little bit of The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, because it is a brilliant read, even now, 50 years later, it must be. So it's from a collection of short stories by Alan Sillitoe, and this is the title story, which is all about a defiant young rebel called Smith, who inhabits the no man's land of institutionalized Borstal. Um, it's a groundbreaking work which captured the grim isolation of the working classes in the English Midlands when it was first published in the 1960s, so a bit earlier than I said. Sillitoe's depiction of petty crime and deep-seated anger in industrial and desperate cities remains as potent today as when it was written over 50 years ago. And just rereading it today, I was instantly captivated again. And I would urge anyone that hasn't read it to go back and read it or read it for the first time, because it is a brilliant read. And I'll just read you a little bit. It's difficult to stop once you get going. And also you can find it for free online, by the way. By the way, do you like the artistic bit of mud, which obviously was really from my run today, not that long ago. Look at those muddy shoes. It really is quite intensely deep and puddly out there today. I wonder if any of you are runners. Let me know if you are. And let me know, if you are runners, do you listen to audiobooks when you run? That's something else that we're going to be talking about later. Here we go with a bit of The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, and my cat Lulu is here to say hello. As soon as I got to Borstal, they made me a long distance cross country runner. I suppose they thought I was just the build for it because I was long and skinny for my age, and still am. And in any case, I didn't mind it much, to tell you the truth, because running had always been made much of in our family, especially running away from the police. I've always been a good runner, quick, and with a big stride as well. The only trouble being that no matter how fast I run, and I did a very fair lick, even though I say so myself, It didn't stop me getting caught by the cops after that bakery job. You might think it's a bit rare having long distance cross country runners in Borstal, thinking that the first thing a long distance cross country runner would do when they set him loose at them fields and woods would be to run as far away from the place as they could get, on a bellyful of Borstal Slamgullion. But you're wrong, and I'll tell you why. The first thing is that them bastards over us aren't as daft as they most of the time look. And for another thing, I'm not so daft as I would look as if I tried to make a break for it on my long distance running, because to abscond and then get caught is nothing but a mug's game, and I'm not falling for it. Cunning is what counts in this life. And even that you've got to use in the slyest way you can. I'm telling you straight, they're cunning, and I'm cunning. If only them and us had the same ideas, we'd get on like a house on fire. But they don't see eye to eye with us, and we don't see eye to eye with them. So that's how it stands and how it is between us. The thing is that they know I won't try to get away from them. They sit there like spiders in that crumbly manor house, perched like jumped up jackdaws on the roof, watching out over the drives and fields like German generals from the top of the rank of the tanks. And even when I jog trot on behind a wood and they can't see me anymore, they know my sweeping brush head will bob along the hedge top in an hour's time, and that I'll report to the bloke on the gate. By the way, for people that are joining now, I'm reading from The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner by Alan Sillitoe, which is one of the most famous pieces of literature that people think of when they think about running in literature. And of course, I'm going to be running as I go this evening. I really ought to be doing this session on a running machine. That would have been a good idea. Damn, why didn't I think of that? Um, Even when I jog trot on behind a wood and they can't see me anymore, they know my sweeping brush head will bob along that hedge top in an hour's time, and I'll report on the bloke to the gate. Because when on a raw and frosty morning I get up at 5 o'clock and stand shivering, my belly off on the stone floor and all the rest still have another hour to snooze before the bells go, I think downstairs through all the corridors to the big outside door with a permit running card in my fist. I feel like the first and last man in the world, both at once, if you can believe what I'm trying to say. I feel like the first man because I've already got a stitch on and I'm sent against the frozen fields in a shimmy and shorts. Even the first poor bastard dropped onto the earth in midwinter knew how to make a suit of leaves or how to skin a pterodactyl for a top coat. But there I am, frozen stiff, with nothing to get me warm except a couple of hours long distance running before breakfast, not even a slice of bread and sheep dip. They're training me up fine for the big sports day and would mess themselves like loonies if they didn't have slaveys to beck and call. Come and make speeches to us about sports being just the thing to get us leading an honest life and keep our itching finger ends off them shop blocks and safe handles and hair grips to open gas meters. They give us a bit of blue ribbon and a cup for a prize after we've shagged ourselves out running or jumping like racehorses. Only we don't get so well looked after as racehorses, that's the only thing. So there I am, standing in the doorway in shimmy and shorts, not even a dry crust in my guts, looking out at frosty flowers on the ground. I suppose you think this is enough to make me cry. Not likely, just because I feel like the first bloke in the world wouldn't make me bawl. It makes me feel 50 times better than when I'm cooped up in that dormitory with 300 others. No, it's sometimes when I stand there feeling like the last man in the world that I don't feel so good. And I feel like the last man in the world because I think that all those 300 sleepers behind me are dead. They sleep so well. I think that every scruffy head's kicked the bucket in the night and I'm the only one left. And when I look out into the bushes and frozen ponds, I have the feeling that it's going to get colder and colder until everything I can see, meaning my red arms as well, is going to be covered with 1,000 miles of ice, all the earth, right up to the sky and over every bit of land and sea. So I try to kick this feeling out and act like I'm the first man on earth. And that makes me feel good. So, as soon as I'm steamed up enough to get this feeling in me, I take a flying leap out of the doorway and off I trot. I'm in Essex. It's supposed to be a good borstal, at least. That's what the governor said to me when I got here from Nottingham. I won't go on because, as you can see, it's a book, or rather a novella, which is The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, which is utterly gripping, brilliantly written, funny, and the voice of the narrator is totally compelling. So once you start, it is literally impossible to stop. But do read it. It's a great read. It's not very long. It'll probably only take you an hour, if that, to read it. And it's all about running, but it's all about the character of the boy that's the runner who lives in a borstal, and he comes from a family of petty thieves. And it's about what happens to him in the borstal and what happens when he leaves the borstal. And it's a great story, which has also been made into a film, which is also brilliant. Um, so check it out. Now, that's the book that everyone thinks of when they first think about books about running. And there's a few others that always come to mind when people start thinking about books about running. And there's also been a few that people have mentioned to me, which I didn't know about. So, one that immediately comes into people's minds is Haruki Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running, which is a memoir of Murakami's running life. So I'm sure many of you will have read Murakami's novels, which are pretty amazing. IQ 84, one of my favourites. Also, Norwegian Wood and The Wind Up Bird Chronicle and Kafka on the Shore. Many a brilliant book by Haruki Murakami. And this is his memoir because Murakami is also a long distance runner who does races of about 50 miles. And when he's running, he thinks about many profound and wonderful things. But in this book, he also writes about getting to the state beyond thought, which you get to when you're running. And I'm sure that many of you who are runners and readers and thinkers will be conscious of that state of getting beyond thought. And perhaps if you're ultra runners who like to run in a very extreme way for hundreds of miles, such as Matt Wyman, whose book I'm going to be talking about this evening as well, he's an ultra runner. Um, you will know about that state of mind that you have to get to in order to stop feeling human in a way so that you can just be a running machine. And Murakami talks about that in this book, which I'm just going to read you a little bit of to give you an idea of what the book's like. Ultimately, using every trick in the book, I managed to grit my teeth and make it through 13 miles of sheer torment. I'm not a human. I'm a piece of machinery. I don't need to feel a thing but forge on ahead. That's what I told myself. That's about all I thought about, and that's what got me through. If I were a living person of blood and flesh, I would have collapsed from the pain. There definitely was a being called me right there, and accompanying that is a consciousness that is the self. But at that point, I had to force myself to think that those were convenient forms and nothing more. It's a strange way of thinking and definitely a very strange feeling. Consciousness trying to deny consciousness. You have to force yourself into an inorganic place. Instinctively, I realized that this was the only way to survive. I'm not a human. I'm a piece of machinery. I don't need to feel a thing. Just forge on ahead. I repeat this like a mantra, a literal mechanical repetition, and I try hard to reduce the perceptible world to the narrowest parameters. All I can see in the ground is the ground 3 yards ahead, nothing beyond. My whole world consists of the ground 3 yards ahead. No need to think beyond that. The sky and wind, the grass, the cows munching the grass, the spectators, cheers, lake, novels, reality, the past, memory. These mean nothing to me, just getting me past the next 3 yards. This was my tiny reason for living as a human. No, I'm sorry. as a machine. And there's more of that. There's a lot more of that. It is a lovely read. It's actually a great book to read, to listen to as well. I've known people that have listened to this book while running. Um, dare I say, it does get a tiny bit repetitive. I absolutely love Murakami's novels. I think he's amazing, a brilliant writer. Maybe this at times just gets a little bit boring. Others may disagree. It's not my favourite of his books, but it is very interesting in terms of what you think about when you think about running. And people who are runners joining tonight will be familiar with that. What happens in your brain when you're running? Does it free you? Does it set you free to think about amazing imaginary lives and other possibilities? Do you let your imagination go and go off into stories if you're a writer? Do you start thinking about the books that you're writing? Or if you're working, does running sometimes give you a bit of a moment of revelation when you think that's the answer to this problem? Or do you just go into a kind of inhuman state, which Murakami talks about in now what I talk about when I talk about running? Um, or do you listen to audiobooks, which I often do? And if you do listen to audiobooks, what type do you listen to? Do you listen to um, thrilling books to keep you going? Books and Bowie Dreams, thanks for your comment. Not my favourite either, but I did like reading it. Me too. It's a good read. It's definitely worth a read, but it's not his best book. But, you know, I do love fiction, I have to say. And Books and Bowie Dreams, thank you for your recommendations. One of which is a book that I don't know called Run for Your Life by Lionel Davidson. Is that right? No, sorry. Run for Your Life by David Lyne, which is a children's book, which looks brilliant. Apparently, in the US, it's known as Soldier and Me, a children's adventure novel. It says by Lionel Davidson. That's really confusing. Oh, he's the same person, writing as David Lyne, published in 1966. And that does sound like a great read. So thanks very much for that recommendation. And I'm going to be talking about a few other children's books this evening as well. It's difficult to know quite the best order to talk about these books in, as there's so many great books to mention. But I'm going to zip to a young adult book, which is a great, brilliant read, which I love, called Now is the Time for Running by Michael Williams. And this is a book set in Zimbabwe and South Africa. It's really hard hitting and quite grim reading in many ways because it starts with a massacre of our hero's village. Um, it's about two boys who are brothers called Deo and Innocent, and they, at the beginning of the book, are playing soccer with all their friends from their village in the dusty fields of Zimbabwe. And Innocent is a boy who is a bit different to others. He is neurodiverse and doesn't really understand always what's going on around him in the way that other people understand it. So Deo looks after Innocent. Sorry, my cat is trying to get involved here. And that is kind of the crux and the drama of the book, that Deo and Innocent at the very beginning of the book have to flee their village because pretty much everyone in their village is killed, including their grandfather and many of their relatives. And they flee from Zimbabwe and try to get to South Africa in order to find a better life and escape the massacre that's going on around them in Zimbabwe. And it's an amazingly moving and deeply awful book to read. And I have given it to quite a few teenagers, including my own children, who have been very deeply affected by it, but it's, although it is very sad and it does have real grit and tragedy in it, it does also have hope and optimism. And to be honest, it's not literally about running in the sense of they're not athletes, they're running away from soldiers and trying to run to a better life. But there is quite a lot of running in the book. A bit like in the 39 Steps, which, when I was thinking about books that relate to running earlier this evening, came to my mind because 39 Steps by John Buchan, a classic, has a huge amount of running in it, but it's not obviously about running in the sense of athletic running. It's about running away, hiding, and also trying to catch criminals. Another brilliant children's book, which I can't actually find the true copy of, annoyingly, even though I have it somewhere in my children's book collection, is The Fastest Boy in the World by Elizabeth Laird, which is a fantastic novel written for kids, probably about 11 up, maybe slightly younger, maybe 9 up. It's about Solomon, 11-year-old Solomon, who loves to run. He has heroes who are the great athletes of the Ethiopian national team. He lives in Ethiopia, and he dreams that one day he will be a gold medal winning athlete like them, in spite of his ragged shorts and bare feet. When his grandfather announces that he's going to take Solomon to Addis Ababa, Solomon cannot believe his ears. A trip to the capital. It's unfathomable and amazing. However, Solomon's joy is increased when he realizes that the Ethiopian running team will be doing a victory parade through the city that day. Maybe he will get a glimpse of Haile Gebrselassie or Derato Tulu. But Solomon's grandfather has other plans. As Solomon follows him through the big and very confusing streets, he learns something he cannot believe. The strict old man is a war hero who once risked his life to save a friend, and he's been in hiding ever since. When his grandfather collapses, Solomon realizes that he has to get help from his village, and he's the only person that can do it. He has to run 20 miles from the city to his home, and his grandfather's life hangs in the balance in his hands. Can the barefooted runner go on this epic run and make it 20 miles? It's a really lovely book. I did absolutely love it. The Fastest Boy in the World by Elizabeth Laird. It's very moving. It tells a great story set in Ethiopia, gives you an amazing insight into living in Ethiopia, and it's a great read. Um, so, I have many others that I want to mention, and I'm just going, I'm afraid, rather randomly, partly through books that you've mentioned to me, and partly through books that came to mind when I was thinking about um, books for this theme. So, um, one of you lovely listeners, I'm sorry I didn't write down who it was, mentioned Coasting by Elise Downing, which sounds like a brilliant book, which I haven't read. And since discovering it, I've been researching it, and it looks like a really good read. It's a blend of memoir and travel writing. Uh, it's Downing's unique, humorous account of running 5,000 miles around the coast of Britain and the life lessons gained in the process. It's an inspiring read from start to finish, says the blurb. Elise was spending a lot of time crying on buses. She had just graduated from university. She had a shiny new flat, her first proper job, and a budding relationship, and they were all making her utterly miserable. Sitting at work one day, she hit upon the obvious solution: run 5,000 miles around the coast of Britain, carrying her kit on her back. It's an obvious solution to feeling really depressed, many would say. So 6 months later, Ellie set off with absolutely no ultra running experience, unable to read a map, and having never pitched a tent alone before. I love the sound of the way that she's just totally going for it here. Over the next 301 days that followed, she developed a debilitating fear of farmyard animals, cried a lot on beaches, and saw Britain at its most wild and wonderful. So that's Coasting by Elise Downing. And Elise Downing is now described as an ultra runner. So she obviously became one through this amazing adventure that she went off on. And the blurb says, coasting is about putting one foot in front of the other, even when it feels impossible, and trying to enjoy it too. With heart and humour, Elise explores the thrill of taking risks and putting your trust in total strangers. It does sound a bit like the Salt Path, but for runners, and I do love the sound of that. Um, so many more books to talk about. Where to go next? I'm going to nip over to fiction again, and then I'll be coming back to some more non-fiction. So thanks to the Hungerford Bookshop, who saw my post and mentioned The Motion of the Body Through Space, which is a novel by Lionel Shriver, which I haven't read yet, and I really want to, because again, it sounds brilliant. All these books are coming up, which I need to read. So this is a book that tells the story of Serenata and Remington, a long married couple in their early 60s living in Hudson, New York. A grim coincidence of professional and physical setbacks has recently halted the pleasant progress of their lives. Osteo, Osteoarthritis in both knees has forced Serenata to stop running, a habit she had practiced for decades, and Remington has been forced out of his job at the Albany Department of Transportation, a dismissal that has unmanned him. At a moment when they should be stewing together in stationary solidarity, Remington suddenly announces, I've decided to run a marathon. That declaration opens the novel and launches Serenata and Remington towards a crisis that will test their marriage and even threaten their lives. This sounds like such an interesting read. Lionel Shriver, who wrote We Need to Talk About Kevin, and several other brilliant and very terrifying in many ways books, has surely written a really interesting one there in The Motion of the Body Through Space. So I know that in the book she also takes a scalpel, as is her wont, to the fitness industry and is remarkably harsh and funny in a dark way, um, in the way that she describes the characters. I'm getting this from the New York Review of Books. As a character, Serenata is a fascinating and daringly unsympathetic heroine, burdened with the loneliness of her greater insight, but she can also be a hectoring bore. So they don't absolutely love the book, but the Hungerford Bookshop gave it a great review, and I love the Hungerford Bookshop, so I'm going to listen to them and check it out. Now, another book that really comes to mind, it's one of the first one that comes to mind when you think about books about running, is Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, which is an amazing, very inspiring, brilliant book, which was also recommended to me, by the way, by Matt Wyman, whose book Failure is an Option is one I'm going to talk about in a minute. So this book, Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, is a bit of a tome for many a long distance runner. It's one of those books that has sent many people who thought a little bit about running. It sent them to buy some trainers and rush off down some country paths, or even go barefoot. And once again, I'm just going to brandish muddy trainers just to keep you entertained with the whole running theme. So, Born to Run is full of incredible characters, amazing athletic achievements, cutting edge science, and pure inspiration. It's an epic adventure that began with one simple question: why does my foot hurt? So, Christopher McDougall, um, He starts the book. I think he's a journalist. He's not particularly fit. He's got an incredibly sore foot. And he starts thinking, why can't I run? Why does my foot hurt? And he decides to go in search of an answer. And he finds a tribe of the world's greatest distance runners and learns their secrets. In the process, showing us that everything we ever thought we knew about running is wrong. Um, this tribe of extreme runners is isolated by the most savage terrain in North America. They're the reclusive Tarahumara Indians of Mexico's deadly copper canyons, and they are custodians of the lost art of running hundreds of miles without rest, chasing down anything from a deer to an Olympic marathoner while enjoying every mile of it. And I must say, it is a really fantastic, fascinating, brilliant read, which makes you feel like we are indeed born to run, that it's kind of ridiculous that we don't spend our whole lives running. And the way he describes this tribe is really mesmerizing because they all are brought up running. So the kids play these massive games all day where they run across the terrain of the kind of desert land where they live barefoot 80 miles a day unblinkingly. They don't seem to notice any kind of pain or even get remotely tired. Their superhuman talent is matched by uncanny health and serenity, leaving the Tarahumara immune to the diseases and strife that plague modern existence. With the help of Caballo Blanco, a mysterious loner who lives among the tribe, the author was able not only to uncover the secrets of the Tarahumara, but also to find his own inner ultra athlete as he trained for the challenge of a lifetime, a 50-mile race through the heart of Tarahumara country, pitting the tribe against an odd band of Americans, including a star ultra marathoner, a beautiful young surfer, and a barefoot wonder. So it is a really exuberant read. Um, I'm not a big non-fiction reader, but I did lap this up. It's really fascinating, partly because of this incredible tribe, and there's a lot of other fantastic stories about runners around the world who are seemingly superhuman, but it makes you feel like you could do it too. So that's Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. An amazing read and recommended to everyone. And that was also pointed out to me by Matt Wyman, who wrote this book, Failure is an Option. I think it was published about a year ago, which is the story, his story, of an average runner who sets out to discover just how far he can go. With the support and misgivings of his family, who are and aware that his quickest years are behind him, Matt Wyman leaves the Saturday morning 5K to push towards 100-mile ultra marathons and beyond. By slowing things down to run a very long way, he joins a growing number of men and women from all walks of life, striving to do something extraordinary. So, what is great about this book is that Matt portrays himself as just an ordinary guy who kind of semi accidentally decided to start running long ultra marathons. And he does indeed go on, I think, 150-mile runs. I might be wrong, but they are insanely and ridiculously long. I must say, every year when I'm in the Lake District in the summer, there's an ultra marathon going on when I'm there, and I see all these people running 100 miles. I think it's from Lake Ullswater to Windermere, and I always think, wow, I really want to do that, but I haven't done it yet. But if you read Matt Wyman's book, you would feel like you can do it. Anyone can do it. And indeed, Murakami's book too, what I talk about when I talk about running, similarly makes you feel that anyone can actually run the distance. It's all about mind over matter. Um, so this is a really engaging, beautifully told story, which again, being a mostly someone that loves to read fiction and stories. Um, it's not the kind of book I normally am drawn to, but I hugely enjoyed it. And every chapter heading is a really intriguing one, such as The Englishman Who Went Up a Hill, or The First Half is Physical. If they're upright, kick them out. And I'm going to read you a little bit to give you a little bit of an idea of the writing style and the content of the book. This is from about halfway when Matt is beginning his true journey of doing epic long distance runs. The North Downs Way combines ancient trade routes and pilgrim pathways across Surrey and Kent. Slipping almost unnoticed under the capital, it crosses pastoral farmlands, winds through ancient woodland, and spans ridges that provide unrivaled views across England's high weald. For a trail that takes you into the heart of this area of outstanding natural beauty, it feels odd that the official gateway is just a gloomy alley off the Farnham Ring Road. As I funneled in among just over 300 runners, it seemed more like a place for provincial youths to deal dope than a historical departure point for drovers and Chaucerian travellers. Still, it served as the start line for a non-stop ultramarathon across 100 miles, which was all that mattered to me. As Centurion's race director, James Elson stood on the bank with his air horn aloft, a hush spread all the way to the back of the pack. Have a good race, everyone! Look after each other! As a first timer attempting this distance, it didn't feel like the beginning of something that might prove too far for me. In many ways, the mental undertaking had begun some time before. For the preceding fortnight, I'd been forced to process so much self doubt and anxiety that reaching this point felt like a victory in its own right. As the big day had approached, I knew that I would feel nervous. I just hadn't anticipated that I would come close to a panic attack on several occasions. It all boiled down to the enormity of the undertaking. It was just too much to process. Converting what I faced into kilometres didn't help matters. 160 of the damn things just seemed ridiculous, which it really does. 160 kilometres to run. As I had learnt in James's race briefing, the twists and turns of the North Downs Way, 100, translated on the ground to about 104 miles. I had thought about recalculating what that meant in real money, but it seemed a bit pointless when it all lay ahead of me. As soon as I tried to imagine running towards triple mileage figures, my chest would tighten and a voice inside my head asked me what the hell I'd been thinking. That voice only fell quiet on setting off, as if perhaps there was nothing more to be said. All week it had encouraged me to skip the race and move on with my life. Now there was no other option left for me but to find out the hard way whether I'd taken my running too far. What's been the best bit? Asked Emma when she called me as arranged 5 hours into the race. That's his wife. A keen cyclist as well as a runner, my wife was away that weekend with her two-wheel friends. While I'd never been drawn to climb into the saddle, too scarred by all the kids' bikes clogging the hall, just then it seemed like quite an inviting way to move. And what's been the worst? She added. That gives you a bit of a clue. It is a great read. It's sort of, in many ways, a bit like a manual of how to become an ultra runner. There's Matt climbing some craggy hill, possibly in the Lake District. By the way, he's also written a book which is really fascinating. I'm just trying to read this print, which is really small and really faint in the semi-darkness. Matt Wyman is a best-selling author of books including Walking with Sausage Dogs, The Unexpected Genius of Pigs, and Our Planet, with a foreword by Sir David Attenborough. He has collaborated on many popular sporting and God, it's really hard to read. This is the one I'm looking for. Age is Just a Number by Charles Ugatar, who took up sprinting aged 90. That's the one I was excited about. Age is just a number. Check that out. Anyone that's feeling like they're feeling a bit old and don't want to start running, uh, you will be inspired by all of these books. Failure is an option, because Matt started running in middle age and became an ultra runner. Um, the Lionel Shriver book is also about a runner who starts running in his 60s. Um, and age is just a number. That sounds like it's also a great read about a man who started sprinting in his 90s. Okay, then we got a few others that came up when I was thinking about this topic, both fiction and non-fiction. Alexandra Hemingsley, she wrote a fabulous book called Running Like a Girl, which is a really lovely book about her discovery of running when she basically was defeated by gyms, bored of yoga, and decided to run. But when she began, it all went pear shaped quite quickly. She wasn't having fun. But 6 years after beginning and trying to start running, she's run 5 marathons in 2 continents. Her dad says you run with your head as much as with your legs. So, while it's a book about running, it's not just a book about running. It's about ambition, relationships, your relationship to your body, and realizing that you can do more than you ever thought you could. It's funny, honest, and emotional. That's Running Like a Girl by Alexandra Hemingsley. And then another one, which was also recommended to me by um, someone on Instagram, thank you very much, was Jog On by Bella Mackie, which is a keep fit book like no other. Sunday Times columnist Bella Mackie has written this very forthright account of how she overcame deep-seated mental health problems through the invigorating activity of running. Inspirational, disarmingly frank, and laugh out loud funny, Jog On is a motivational marvel. Um, she was divorced and struggling with deep rooted mental health problems. She ended her 20s in tears. She could barely find the strength to get off the sofa, let alone piece her life back together, until one day she did something that she would never have done of her own free will. She pulled on a pair of trainers and went for a run. Her first attempt didn't last long, but to her surprise, she was out there again the next day and the day after that. So, Jog On is another really inspirational memoir of someone overcoming mental health difficulties through running. And there's a lot of people who swear by running as a way of staying sane. I just want to mention a couple more before we come to an end. Um, this book caught my eye when I was looking through my bookshelves for books about running, also called Born to Run, like Christopher McDougall's book. It's about a dog, and it's actually really got nothing to do with running and the topic tonight, but we love Michael Morpurgo, so I just thought I'd grab it off the shelf and brandish it to you. I think it's a book that's actually rather similar to another book about dogs, which is all about dogs reincarnating. A Dog's Purpose, if there's anyone out there who's seen that film. That's, I'm now getting totally off topic, by the way. That is a book about a dog that keeps being reincarnated in new forms. And this book, Michael Morpurgo's Born to Run, is a similar story. I'll read you the bit on the back. For best mate, being rescued is only the start of his adventures. From unwanted burden to favourite companion, and from pet to champion race dog, this remarkable greyhound proves that it's not just cats who have more than one life. Cast aside, kidnapped, or living rough on the streets, best mate can always find a way to survive. But will he ever find a real home? So that's Born to Run. Very much off topic. And I've just seen that Matt has joined. I've just been talking about your book, Failure is an Option, which I've been singing the praises of as a fantastic manual to get people out on the road and feel like they can do it, but they can also realize that failure is an option. And it's a really fantastic read, which makes anyone feel like they can get out there and do an ultra run, which frankly does seem completely insane. 160 kilometers, madness. Um, so, I also wanted to mention, because I've been talking about a few children's books and young adult books over the course of the evening, Feeling Sorry for Celia by Jacqueline Moriarty, who is a fantastic writer um, and really good for kids and teenagers. This is a really lovely book. I'd recommend it to readers maybe from about 12 and up. I actually read it as an adult because I was reading it when I wrote The Story Cure, which is the book I wrote with Susan Elderkin, like the novel Cure, but it's for kids, in which we give recommendations of books which will help with particular ailments. And in this book, there's a girl who is a runner who um, whose best friend goes and lives very far away. They live in Australia, and it's about the letters. It's written in um, epistolary form. It's letters that they write to each other, which does slightly date it, I have to say, um, because obviously nowadays people would be writing emails rather than letters, and it was only written maybe 15 years ago. I'm also just saying that this is not my book. It belongs to lovely Charlotte Raby, my friend who gave it to me. Thanks, Charlotte. It was written in 2001. So it's epistolary, written in letters, and it's about a friendship. It's about running, and it's really inspiring. And it makes you feel like you can run forever, a bit like many of the other characters in the books that I've been mentioning. So, I have talked tonight about um, The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner by Alan Sillitoe, which is a novella of some brilliance, and it's actually more of a critique of what it's like to be living in working class England in the 1960s than it is about running. But it is also about running, and it's about where your mind goes when it's freed by running. And that's what we runners love, I think, is all those thoughts that you have when you're running, or also that ability to stop thinking when you're running. And that's what Murakami writes about so brilliantly in his book, What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. Um, I've also been talking about The Fastest Boy in the World by Elizabeth Laird, which is a fantastic kids' book set in Ethiopia, which is a really lovely, moving story. Thoroughly recommended to everyone. I also talked about Now is the Time for Running. I'm just trying to find it so I can brandish it again, which is another fantastic read, which I did absolutely love, and now I can't see it, which is set in Zimbabwe and South Africa. Now is the Time for Running, which is, to be honest, more about political running, running away from a massacre in Zimbabwe, trying to find a better life, being a migrant, and it's a really brilliant read. Then I've also talked about a few memoir type books. So Coasting by Elise Downing, which is all about Elise's journey when she decided to run around the whole of the coast of Britain. Also, going back to fiction again, The Motion of the Body Through Space by Lionel Shriver, which is about a disintegrating marriage as a couple in their 60s take up running. Is this a good idea, we ask ourselves? But it's quite a great satire on the fitness industry as well. Born to Run by Chris McDougall, which is a fantastic read. Very much recommended by many a runner including Matt Wyman. Thank you for that excellent recommendation, which you said inspired you as well. Um, Matt's book, Failure is an Option, which is a fantastic memoir of Matt's journey into being an ultra runner, and uh, Jog On by Bella Mackie, which is all about overcoming mental health difficulties through running. And then, oh yes, I just remembered two other books that I haven't mentioned yet. So Natalie Haynes, she's a runner and also an amazing novelist and writer of non-fiction. And in her book, A Thousand Ships, which is all about the story of the Odyssey, but told through the voices of women. So it's all of those women that are generally neglected or given a brief description of in Homer's Odyssey. She gives them voices. And one of the people that she gives a voice to is Penthesilea, who is one of the um, Amazonian warriors. She is, in fact, the queen of the Amazons. And she turns up on the battlefield of Troy, determined to kill. Oh God, do I mean Agamemnon? Suddenly having a terrible blank on who I'm talking about. Greek names. Penthesilea. So the reason I'm mentioning her is because she is Achilles. Sorry, it's Achilles. It's not Agamemnon. Achilles, sorry. Anyone who is a Greek scholar listening at this moment, how could I get it so wrong? I'm talking about Achilles. So Penthesilea, she is an incredible runner, and she and her sister spend their whole lives before they go to battle, trying to outrun each other, and they draw their bows and arrows, shoot an arrow, and then they both chase the arrow together. But one day they're having that race, and Penthesilea's sister gets stabbed by the arrow. One of those ridiculous things that happen in Greek tragedies. And so at that point, she is horrified, of course, and heartbroken. So off she goes to war, heedless of her own life, and she decides that she's going to kill Achilles. And off she goes into battle. And I won't tell you what happens. Read the book. That's A Thousand Ships. But the way that Penthesilea, the way that Natalie describes her and her incredible running prowess is fantastic. She's an amazing writer. Read A Thousand Ships. It will make you want to run like Penthesilea and shoot that arrow and go after it. One final book to mention is the book that inspired David Putnam, the filmmaker, to create Chariots of Fire, which is surely the music that we all hear whenever we think about running. Um, so, the book that inspired David Putnam to to create Chariots of Fire was a book with a really boring title, which is called An Approved History of the Olympic Games. And I'm going to read you a little passage from it, which is the bit that inspired Putnam to create Chariots of Fire, because he was apparently in the 1970s reading this book in a bath in a country house in an idle moment, and he got excited by this passage in this book, and that's what set him down the road of creating one of the most memorable films ever. So here we go. Undoubtedly, the dark horse honours of the 1924 Games went to E.H. Liddell, a bandy-legged little Scottish divinity student who, driven from his favourite event, the 100 metres, by his religious scruples, which prevented him from running on Sunday, surprised himself and everybody else by winning the 400 metres in record time. Liddell, an awkward runner who obviously was unfamiliar with the distance, set out like a scared jackrabbit at the sound of the gun and fought off the challenge of H.M. Fitch of the United States down the stretch to cover the distance in 47 and 3/5 seconds. Not satisfied with this performance, he was a good third in the 200 metres, which was won by Jackson Scholz of the United States. The third British victor was Douglas Lowe, a stylish runner with a beautiful finish, who timed his sprint perfectly to capture the 800 metres from a field of American favourites, coming up with a rush that failed to win, chiefly because it was poorly timed. Paul Martin, a young Swiss, provided the main sensation of the race by taking second and almost catching Lowe at the tape. So that's a little tiny section of an approved history of the Olympic Games, which is what inspired David Putnam to create Chariots of Fire. So it's actually surprisingly uh, grippingly written and makes you think it's possibly not such a boring book. The cat is coming to say hello at this point. She really doesn't want to join in with all this talk of running, though. So, on that merry note, I'm going to come to an end and I'm going to put my hookahs to rest, though I still love them. I just don't think I can quite throw them away, even though they literally do have holes in them. But thanks so much for joining me tonight. I'd love to know if you have any other books pertaining to running that I haven't mentioned. I'll put out a list of books that I've talked about this evening on my Instagram and Facebook page. And I'll be back next week with more bibliotherapy. Do let me know if you have any particular topics that you'd love me to talk about or investigate, or if you think about bibliotherapy questions. And something that I haven't really talked about tonight is what you listen to when you're running. Audiobooks. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I do think it really helps if you're listening to something gripping and exciting, not necessarily fantastic literature, not necessarily even Haruki Murakami talking about running, um, not even Matt Wyman talking about running. I think generally what we want to hear when we're running, obviously lots of people listen to music to keep them going, but I love to listen to things that get me going and get me excited and keep me gripped so as to keep running. Yes, I'm just being asked by a name that's very long and which I can't really um, elucidate. Hello, sorry to completely garble your Instagram name, but welcome and thanks for joining me. I am a runner, but not not an ultra runner. I just run every day if possible. I have a Vizsla dog hound who needs a lot of running every day. I run, hello. So I have to go running with her every day, but I only do basically 5k a day, occasionally more. I have run a couple of half marathons, but I've never done a marathon, but I would like to. But I was saying earlier that I would love to do an ultra run, and I am very much inspired by this book and also by this book to attempt an ultra marathon. And you're saying Diary of an Adult Ballerina. Who's that by? Oh, I see. Sorry, that's you. I was thinking that that was a novel, which would be a great novel. And thank you for translating your name. And that is a fantastic name. I love that. Are you writing a novel? I feel you ought to. Um, yes, well, you can catch up because I did start at 9 o'clock. So you can still find the video. You'll be able to find it on Instagram and it will also be on YouTube. So do subscribe to my channel on YouTube, everyone. It costs you nothing. It's great for me if you subscribe because it's good if I have more numbers subscribing. So do subscribe and also do consider come along to all my future sessions. And it's lovely to have you here. Diary of an Adult Ballerina, a ballerina from Spain. Are you a big reader? I wonder. I'm guessing that you probably are. And do you like to read fiction, which is what I normally talk about? But I do also talk about non-fiction on some occasions, particularly tonight when I've been talking about running books. Um, but I am going to come to an end as it's 10 o'clock. But do join me next week. I do sessions every week, every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, and they're normally on my channel on Ella Bear 2. But once a month, I do them on Damien Barr's Literary Salon on Instagram and Facebook. And that's normally the middle of the month, about the 15th or the 20th on a Wednesday night. So find me there. And also, you can always book a bibliotherapy session with me, one to one, when I talk to you all about what you like to read, what you don't like to read, what's going on in your life. And then I prescribe to you the best books to read right now. So if you're interested in booking a bibliotherapy session, find my website, ellabear2.com, and send me an email. So, on that note, I will say good night. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. See you next week. Good night.